Hi guys, happy days because I finally got my hands on my FX Impact Powerblock and my 800mm barrel tensioning kit. I wouldn't be Airbuks and I wouldn't have this channel if I wouldn't go together with you through the installation of various of these items. A lot of work, so let's waste no time and dive straight into it. Alright, just one quick thing before we start and install that Powerblock. Let's see what kind of velocity we have now at the moment and then we can revisit it once the Powerblock is installed. So we've got a 700mm barrel, regulator is at about 140 bar, macro is on 16, micro is on line number 3 and the valve is just a touch above 4 lines. So let's see, everything is okay. These are some 28 grains, nothing special, Zane slugs. And it should be around the 960s if I'm not mistaken.
967.
967.
969.
969.
969.
969 duplicate. One more for good measure.
969.
3 in a row, 969, very consistent out of my M3. So let's see and revisit this with the same slugs once we got the Powerblock installed and see if we can get any increase in power, of course. Right, let's continue with the installation. Alright, so let's start off with the kit for the Powerblock for the M3. Part number is 20845. I'll put it up in the corner of the screen maybe, if you're looking for a part number to order this kit. Now, this is the kit for the M3, which already has the 720 plenum. This, I believe, is a blank plug if you do not want to use the gauge at the back, or maybe it's for something different, but we will find out. What's the little part here? This is the new valve part, where your valve sits inside to let the air through the barrel. Then this should be the Powerblock. FX Powerblock, as you can see, really cool. One thing to note is that there is no serial number on the Powerblock when you change it, so please do keep in mind, keep your original block if you need your serial number for the warranty and so on. But once the other one is disinstalled or disassembled, we'll go over and see what the differences are between the two blocks. And then the last thing you get is a power plenum 720, a little bit different probably for the valve that has to go through than the original one that comes on the M3. Now, again, this is the kit when you have an M3 with a power plenum already installed. So you need a little bit less, like the valve rod and stuff. You don't need this. But if you're upgrading your Impact Mark II, for instance, to this one with a power block, you will be needing a slightly different kit, which also comes with a new valve rod, of course. So let me clean up the table and start disassembling. All right, here I have my Impact M3. Very important. Safe gun, make sure it's not cocked. It has been put on safe, there are no pellets in the breech, so we have a safe gun to work on. Now, when we start in this video, I'll go quickly through disassembling everything as I have done it already in the past in many other videos. But if you have any questions regarding the disassembly, you can always hit me up in the comments down below or check one out of my previous videos I've made where I disassemble the complete Impact M3. Right, let's get started. First up, I'll remove the scope. Then I start by removing the bottle to release all the air out of the system. Once that bottle is out, I will take my Allen key and I gently crack the regulator so all the air can escape. That's still in the plenum. Slight crack should do it. While the system is bleeding out, I can already remove my barrel. Loosen the screw at the back. remove the barrel. I'll put it on a bipod, which is easier to remove some parts. Like this, we'll go ahead and remove this top rail, 4mm at the front. The screws at the back, with the right Allen key, of course. With that out of the way, we can remove our cheek piece. Once the screws are out, remove the cheek piece. Before we can continue, let's verify that all the air is out of the system. Unscrew your valve knob. Remove the spring as well. And with an 11mm box wrench, we can screw the front part out as well, like this. Then we're going to remove all the screws at the top to lift out that top plate. Alright, with all the screws loose, you can lift up like this. Make sure you leave the screws in place as they have a different length and they go back in the same orientation. With that done, you can put this block to the side as well. We're going to remove the cocking linkage, take out the tiny Allen screw that holds down that little pin, and then push up on that little pin, and like this. Take that little pin out, put it safely to the side with that tiny Allen key. Then we can slide back, lift up, leave the orientation like this, as the length of this rod, of course, is important, as we have discussed many times before. Now, with that done, let's quickly remove that bipod again, so we can put it on the side. And now we're going to focus our attention to that block and removing it. So what we're going to do is remove that back piece here. Normally you should be able to unscrew your gauge by hand, just like this, gauge to the side. And then what I would like to do is pull your valve quite forward as it travels through the top of your plenum, and when we're going to unscrew this, it might be possible that your valve starts winding around in a strange orientation and maybe bending it. But at this point we can unscrew the plenum here at the front, and at a certain point wiggle it out like this, put it safely to the side, and we will address it later on. Then we're going to focus our attention on separating the block from all this here. So what we're going to do, once the screws are out, lift it up gently, turn it around. As you can see, there is a tiny spring there that's helping your lever action right here. Make sure it doesn't jump out, put it safely to the side, and we'll address that in a second. And so here we have all the new parts, Power Plenum 720, that valve part, the screw, and the new block. So let me quickly take the old block apart and see what the major differences are and what we have to transfer to the new block. So let's undo that screw here at the bottom, like this. As you can see, there is already a difference in the 2 screws. Not that that is going to make any performance difference. And we can slide this part out like this. Something we'll have to transfer is that screw you see right here. That's your barrel screw. That's already one part done. There is an X-ring in the bottom that seals your cage, so let me quickly take that one out. With a dentist pin like this, it is most probably the easiest way to get it out. Sometimes the small Allen key is also good. I'm trying to do it gentle, not damaging it, so I can reuse it. But it seems to be quite difficult. There it is. Here you have it, just like this. Seems to be still in a very good condition. Just realized I was not wearing my mic, so I hope the audio for the past few minutes was okay. So apply quickly some airgun lube to it, push it back into that front hole here. It's a tight fit. Push it down so it sits all the way nice and flush. Like this, that's one. A big difference that I see, let me quickly see if I can take it out so we can have a look side by side. Is that there is a big difference, as you can see, in the valve part. It seems to be they got rid of all the openings and the slots you have right here, and it's a complete seal tube actually without any o-rings, because I think all the o-rings are inside the block now, as you can see right here, where the other one was just straight drilled through and all the o-rings were holded by that valve. So in order to install it, we should take a little bit of lube on my finger, lube the o-ring that's inside here, slightly coat the outside of this as well. So it slides nicely through the o-rings you have there. You have that dimple you see here, that has to line up with that little screw here. So let's drop it in. Gently guide it through that o-ring that sits there. All the way till the end, just like this. There is a tiny Allen key right here. The dimple is there just to make sure that everything lines up perfectly. Screw it all the way to the bottom, wiggle it a little bit so you know you're in the right position, like this. Then you take your block, and that has to line up with that flat spot right here. So again, maybe a little bit lube on my fingers. Installing things like this, a little bit of lube never hurts anything, just to make sure those o-rings are in very good condition so you won't have any leaks and problems afterwards. Let me make sure I'm doing it correctly. So gently push it in past the o-rings like this. It is a very nice tight fit. Still the last one here. Like so. Line up that flat spot, and to control everything, that should be nicely in the middle. Take that big nice screw, put it down, wiggle a little bit so you know it's nice and flat surfaces together. Tighten it down, not too much of course, like this. And now this is already assembled and we can start the complete assembly process right again. Something else I've noticed with the older block still had two holes in the middle right here, where the new one doesn't have this. And something else I see is that there is a small beveled edge on the outer ring. I don't know if you can see it, and this one didn't have that. Let me see if I can quickly push it in to see. Well, you can see small beveled edge, and they're not. So those are the parts that I can see straightly away. Maybe there are some other things that will help with performance, but that's how you assemble this. And let's now start the complete reassembly. And for reassembly, we're going to put this part back on first. The correct Allen key should be this one. Make sure that lever is still in place, or that spring, better said. That block goes on top of it, like this. Drop the screws in. Two of them have a different length because they have to sit in the back and they don't have this recessed part. So you make sure you put the longer ones on the back side and the shorter ones at the front, of course. Like this, like this. Perfect. Quickly check if your spring is still working, which mine is. Pretty awesome. We can reinstall that gauge at the bottom if you still have this. Some of them put a blank in it because I have this angled manometer bracket. I just line it up, it should seal. I never crank down on it, just hand tight should be good enough. Then we take that part again. Make sure your valve is still all the way seated inside. And while we're in here, I'll put a little bit of lube on that tiny O-ring you have there on the end, just to make sure it guides it nicely inside. Lube that fat O-ring that you have right here, including the threads. Perfect. Keep everything still inside, that's the easiest way. Then gently maneuver that O-ring inside here. Find the threads. It's a little bit difficult on camera. It should go all very smooth and easy. You shouldn't feel any resistance, otherwise you're cross-threading and that could be very nasty. So make sure everything goes on very smoothly. Like so, maybe one more turn. Something very important is that back part together with the front part of your plenum should be pretty flush, otherwise you will have the risk of having problems. Like this. So next, maybe quickly back on the bipod. Slide it over, lock it down, perfect. What am I going to do next? Take my caulking rod, make sure it sits in front of your hammer, just like this. The tiny pin and screw, put it in, taper edged, goes down first. It's a little bit fiddly to find its exact location. Like this. Gently push on it. Take the tiny grub screw. It doesn't have to be tight, it's just there to hold it in place. You don't have to crank down on it or anything. Like this. With that done, we're going to take the top plate for a second, align all the screws, put them on, take the two front ones out because we still have to install that little block for the barrel tensioning kit. Start all the threads so you know that everything is nice in alignment. As well in the back. Sometimes you need to twist the back just a little bit to make sure that everything is nice in line. All the screws should go in very easy. If you feel friction, means there is something that's not 100% aligned. Like that. At this point, we can push in our valve rod again. Confirm at the back that it sits nicely inside that part there. Perfect, just like this. Take your valve knob, adjuster, housing, however you want to call it. 11mm box wrench. Pinch it up, doesn't have to be super tight. Put your spring back in. You can go with a light return spring or with the original one, depends what you have installed inside. The tungsten hammer I don't have yet, and it will come later on in another video. It was at line 4 and just a touch, like this. So, before we can continue, let's have a quick look at what you get in that barrel tensioning kit. Comes nicely packaged in these tubes that we know from FX. And you get a bunch of parts inside. That should be it. So, very obvious, first thing you get is your barrel that you have ordered. The tensioning kit is not only in 800mm, but this is an 800mm 22 caliber, with on one side the slug port and on the other side the pellet port, like we have seen on all the current FX barrels. Your carbon fiber sleeve to tension up that barrel. You also get, of course, a pellet probe because you're ordering a barrel kit, but I have many other pellet probes, so this one will be to the side. Then we got two other main parts. One is your clamping system that we'll be installing with the two screws to tighten down and clamp down on your barrel with an O-ring inside to cushion it a little bit. Really cool, neat. I also see there is a small raised lip on it, and that should be so that the carbon fiber sleeve sits nicely on top of that ridge and everything is nice and straight, of course. And then one last part is this front part, probably, that sits right here, that screws on to the end of your barrel, just like that. And by tightening that screw at the front here, you push or you apply pressure on your carbon fiber sleeve, tensioning up your barrel, of course. Right, with that overview done, we can continue the assembly. So we take that front clamp, the two screws have to face downside, open up your cocking lever just a little bit, slide it in between, like this. Take those two screws that we took out a little bit before, push them through just like this. Also make sure they start nicely, like this. And then what I like to do is to take my barrel, put it through so everything gets settled in and everything is nice and aligned. And for this I will quickly take my original 700mm barrel, guide it through here all the way down. Make sure it seats all the way to the back, just like this. And with that done, we can start tightening up all those screws at the top plate. Make sure you do them in crisscross pattern. Do not over tighten. Right, and with that last screw tightened, I'll quickly take out this barrel again, like so. Then I'll take my 800mm barrel, gently push it through. I'll put it down with the slug side, of course. Nice tight tolerances, like this. And then the first thing we can do is tighten up our barrel screw again, which is important before we start tightening down on that part. So barrel screw in, decock it. Then we take the carbon fiber sleeve, which just slides over the barrel like this. Then on the end we screw in that front part. Make sure your threads again start nicely, just finger tight. And then before we continue, we're going to tighten up the two screws we have there. I like to use a torque wrench from Wheeler, and I'm going to put it at 20, which is the preferred torque spec by FX, I have been told. So one by one, put them up. That's 1, 2. Like this, that should be good enough. And at this point we can put it finger tight, just like this. Take an 18mm spanner, and once it's finger tight, you can of course go to preference. You can crank quite hard down on it. The more you crank this down, the more force it will put on that carbon fiber sleeve, of course. And you can play around with it to see if you get better accuracy with more or less torque on this screw. I'm gonna leave it here, quite strong for now. Pretty cool. Next, I would like to put some air into the system just to make sure we don't have any leaks. So I'll be cocking the impact. Screw the bottle on. Let the system pressurize. And I'll put my bipod again to mount all the top parts, like this. The Sabre tactical rail, putting it on. Make sure the screws align, like this. Let's start with the back ones first. the bigger one. Make sure it is nice and centered over your backbone, so you don't get any trouble in your windage. Like this. And the last part to install is our cheek piece again. Putting it back on. The two screws. Like this. And with the rail on, we can mount our scope again. Very easy with these spur mounts. Just like this. Let me quickly take that bipod back off. Now everything is installed. The barrel, as you can see, it's really firm. Saber Tactical has this barrel clamp, but due to the thinner carbon fiber shroud, the barrel clamp actually is no use. So I thought maybe I could come up with something that we could still have a thicker barrel and use that barrel clamp, which I'm actually quite a fan of, a little bit thicker barrel. So what I have came up with is actually a shroud from a Maverick 700mm, which has a quite longer shroud than the one normally on the Impact. There is no shroud for an 800mm barrel yet, so I thought I came up with something. So I modified the back part. I 3D printed a part with an opening to fit over that carbon fiber sleeve, and at the front I have added the harmonic barrel tuner. You never know, maybe it could help. So basically it should be able to slide over. It's quite a tight fit. And like this it should screw on normally. Some long threads, just like this. And now I have a thicker shroud on my carbon fiber sleeve with that barrel tuner on the end. And who knows, maybe it will help out in the field. Not really sure if it should help out, as the carbon fiber sleeve already stiffens up that barrel quite a lot. So let's get back to the tabletop view. Alright, so let's see now the 800mm barrel and the Powerblock with exactly the same settings as in the beginning of the video, how much it will get us with the 28 grains as we have done in the beginning of the video as well.
1006.
1006.
1008.
1008.
1004.
Alright. 1004, 1006, 1008, maybe a slight retune, because of course we have changed a lot. We'll get that consistency even a little bit better. Really happy with that. So let me quickly swap out for the 700mm barrel and see how much we get there in performance upgrade. Right. Alright, so quickly swap back to the 700mm barrel to see what kind of performance we get here. Same settings, didn't change anything. Take the safety off, of course.
985.
985, before we were at 969. Right about 970.
988.
988.
988.
988. One more.
988.
988. As you can see, we jump about 18 to 20 feet per second just by installing the Powerblock on the Impact without changing anything, all exactly the same settings as in the beginning of the video. When we install the 800, of course, you get the extra length of barrel and you get the extra jump. But of course, with installing these kind of parts, you will have to retune your whole gun, of course, to get it at its optimum state and perfect accuracy, of course. But this video was about installing the power block and the barrel tensioning system. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section down below. I thank you for watching. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on my future videos, and I see you back in the next one. Bye.